I have a ride home with you?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have finished Chumash Bereshit. Chumash Shemot is going to be a bit longer, like 100 times longer. This first parasha, Parashat Bo, the first parasha has mitzvot in it. It already says it has 9. Like those, just 3 times more than we had so far. So, excuse me, 20 mitzvot. I didn't read the whole sentence. So that's we're probably gonna be in this parsha for a while. Good times. Mitzvah Dalet. So we're gonna start off with mitzvah Kidush Hachodesh, which is actually one of the more complex mitzvot that we have. To the extent that the Rambam basically had to write a whole treatise on astronomy in order to explain how the mitzvah works. Right? So who wants to read?
You can go first.
לקדש חדשים ולעבר שניים בבית דין. שנים בבית דין גדול וחוכמה סמוך בארץ. ולקבוע מועדי השנה על פי אותו קידוש שנאמר. החודש הזה לכם ראש חודשים.
Okay, stop there. Let's go back. This is a very dense sentence.
לקדש חודשים ולעבר.
So it's describing the basic tenets of the mitzvah. What is the mitzvah about? What are we supposed to do with this mitzvah? Lekadesh chodashim, that's the one thing. Ula'aber shanim. It actually has 2 parts. Even though it's one mitzvah, there are 2 different applications of it.
Is לקדש to make it holy?
Yeah, to make it holy. But making things holy, we make things holy in so many different ways, right? You can say Lekadesh alayayin, which is a proclamation of the sanctity of Shabbat, right? It's called the Kadesh alayayin. There you could say Lekadesh at Chag HaPesach. That's declaring, not the same as a proclamation. Right? Proclamation is just saying, I recognize that now it's Shabbat and Shabbat is holy. If I declare now is Pesach, I'm actually setting that into motion. I'm actually causing it, right? I'm bringing that about. That's what Beit Din can do. So that's the other sense of Lekadesh. And of course, there are a lot of other meanings or applications of Lekadesh. And we don't usually think about the months as having Kedusha. But since Rosh Chodesh is kind of a holy day, and because all the Chagim have a particular calendar date on them, so as soon as you say the month starts today, you're also determining when the Chag is going to be. And that's why it's called Lekadesh Chodeshim.
Does it also imply that Rosh Chodesh, because it has a spark of holiness in it, can make the month holy? Or is that not part of it?
Does it make the whole month holy? The whole calendar is holy. So, yeah, in a sense. Sure.
Are there any holy or more holy? Let's say Elul. Is that seen as more holy month than any given month, or are all the months equally holy?
We certainly have months that seem to be earmarked for special events. Right? There's a machloket in the Gemara between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. I always forget. Between Nisan and Tishrei, which one is the key time in which the world was created, in which all the Avot were born, in which the Geula happened. That so there is like a recognition that there is one month that's very special. Which one it is a question. It's always a question. But in general, we don't grade the months, right? There are some months that we say, this month is empty, like Mar Cheshvan, right?
Yeah.
Say, there's nothing that happened that month. But that's not necessarily a reflection on the month as a month, it's just an observation.
Yeah.
Each month has a particular character to it, right? We say like Adar, there's like a whole system of matching up a month with a Shevet, with a Mazal, and then there are all sorts of, meanings and significances that you can darshan out from that. But that's obviously things that came into the tradition. I don't know if I can say at a later date, but they certainly gained prominence later on.
I always find it confusing that the names of the months, aren't they from Babylon? And why?
Right.
Why would we use Babylonian names, especially for months, if the months are holy?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The names of the months seem to be not Babylonian, but Persian, and they come from the later stage of the Babylonian exile when Persia took over, and we have a very sparse record of what the original names of the months were. Like the month that Pesach is in is called Chodesh Haviv, and that some believe was the name of the month. It was called Aviv. And we have Chodesh Ziv, which is Iyar or Sivan. I think it's Sivan.
Sounds like Sivan.
Yeah, but it's not.
No.
Not related. And we have at least a nickname for Tishrei was Yerach Eitani, which is one of the proofs or pieces of evidence that's used in the Gemara to argue that Tishrei was the month that the Avot were born in, because they're called Eitanim. Right? They're the Eitanim that are being referred to in the name of the month, Yechid. Those are basically the only names that we know from the Tanakh that may or may not have been the actual names of the months. But there are arguments those that argue that the numbering of the months is actually more significant than the name. And that's saying that using the secular calendar and using the numbers, which is very common in Israeli parlance, there are a lot of Israelis who don't even know the names of the months, of the secular months, right? They don't even know what month January is. They've heard of the name, they don't even remember what month. They know, they call it Chodesh Rishon, right? And so Rav Tzvi Yehuda was particularly adamant about not using the numbers for the secular months, because the Torah says, that's the pasuk that we just read here, Achodesh hazeh lachem, Rosh Chodeshim, that the numbering is what the Torah is particular about, saying that this is when the year starts, even though we have two different starts to the year, right? Because the Torah always says that Nisan is the first month, and we're used to saying that Tishrei is the first month. That goes back to that kind of machloket between the two Tanaim, and that each one has its place. You could say that both opinions are true, right? That Tishrei is the beginning of the calendar and Rosh Hashanah month, and Nisan is also the beginning of the calendar and Rosh Hashanah month, but for different purposes. So yeah, the names of the months, the numbering is like a whole spiel.
Right.
But this is where it starts. So yeah, this is definitely a good place to bring that up. So we have Lekadesh Chodashim, we said, there's sanctity in the calendar. Ule'aber Shanim.
So a bear, is that like a fetus?
That is related to the word fetus. That's the same root. And Laber means to impregnate. So Ubar is a fetus. Le'aber is to impregnate, and we have, of course, Shana Uberet. Just like right now, we're in the middle of the whole two other situation. That means the year is pregnant. So what happens when someone is pregnant? Eventually they give birth. What does the year that's pregnant give birth to? Another month. This is something I just realized this year. It just kind of like fell into place. I was like, oh, that's what it means. That's what I call that. So that's why the extra month is at the end of the year, right? Nisan being the first month, Adar being the 12th month, the gestation period is 12 months for the year, and then it gives birth to an extra month at the end. That's the logic here. That's what the name means.
If Nisan is the first month.
Yeah, and it is in the Torah. And so that's why it's set up that way.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So that's called le'aber shanim, which means to make the decision which year is going to be a leap year and which isn't. That's called le'aber shanim. It's to decide and to proclaim it, to get the word out. Right? There was like an official council for making a decision, and then they would send out messengers to spread the word and let everybody know that this is going to be a leap. So this mitzvah is unusual in that it's not something that an individual can do. This is a mitzvah on Beit Din. So that's why he continues, Beit Din gadol b'chokhmah samuch ba'aretz. These are the conditions of who is expected to do this mitzvah, who it applies to.
Smuch meaning smicha.
Good, we're about to get to that. Yeah, I was going to bring that up, but nobody did. Beit Din gadol b'chokhmah samuch ba'aretz. So it has to be the wisest Beit Din in Israel. It can only happen in Eretz Israel. The whole Beit Din being responsible for this. If we didn't have someone taking care of it, then we would end up by like the Muslims with a 12-month lunar calendar that's always off kilter. That's out of sync with the solar calendar. And the word samuch, so this is a funny word that's been transformed over the ages. If we have samuch in other meanings, it means to be next to be adjacent to. Right? Samuch v'nireh, we have lismoch is to depend on somebody, to lean or depend. And the problem is that the process of certifying somebody is called smicha, right? Everybody knows the word smicha. Where does smicha come from? It's the laying of hands upon the head of the disciple who the authority is being transferred to. This symbolic transfer of authority through the hands, and just the way that we transfer the liability for our actions onto a korban. We have to do smicha on the korban, like we mentioned. The first machloket was about smicha, was about that transfer of onus onto the animal on Yom Tov. So this is how, in our tradition, right, the rabbi, the chacham, gives that responsibility over to his students and authorizes them to give psak that's called smicha. So what happens? Somebody who got smicha is a samuch. In modern Hebrew, in order to differentiate from other applications of the word samuch, which usually means adjacent, right? So we use the term musmach. And instead of saying samchuoti, right, which is what the in the rabbinical version, the rabbinical Hebrew usage is lismoch chachamim, is to give them smicha, to certify them. So in modern Hebrew, to certify is lehasmich. You change it from being binyan kal to binyan hifil, which doesn't actually make sense grammatically. Why would it be hifil? Like, I'm causing you to be adjacent. Lismoch makes more sense. Like, I'm relying on you, right? Lismoch, just like in modern Hebrew we say, Ani somech alecha, right? Right? I trust you. I'm going to trust that you're going to take care of this. So that's what it is. I trust that you're going to have the judgment to use your chokhmah properly. Lasmich is kind of like, okay, we're going to just change it so that it's a different word for this different meaning.
Is this the same spelling as the samech, which is the letter?
Yep.
Any connection you can see?
I don't know of any. I'm sure you could make one up. There might even be one in like Sefer Yetzirah, which I haven't learned yet. Maybe I should learn that next.
Yeah.
That's something I would imagine you find in Sefer Yetzirah, the Zohar, or something like that, but I haven't seen it.
All right.
So that's the meaning of Beit Din Samuch. And the story of Smicha, well, we'll get to that. There's a different mitzvah, the Smuch Chachamim, and we'll talk about that then, the whole historical background. ולקבוע מועדי השנה על פי אותו קידוש. So this is not necessarily a separate action, because once you determine what day Rosh Chodesh is, then the Chag follows, since it's just a date in that month, right? But the Kibua Modei Hashana al Pi Oto Kiddush basically means announcing it. Right? They would announce there were certain months. I see in the Mishnah in Masachet Rosh Hashanah, at the beginning of the Masachet, talks about how they would send out messengers for particular months in which there were Chagim, the Oraita. They would send messengers out to announce to all the communities outside of Israel what day the new month would start, which day they decided Rosh Chodesh was. Retroactively, they would announce it, because you don't know it's Rosh Chodesh until the Eidim come and tell you that they saw the new moon. That's what we're about to read.
I was just learning this with my son, chapter 1. We did it. Just such a different kind of learning for me. In any case, and this idiom, and is it kosher, is it not kosher? Very interesting.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. So here he formulates it as a separate thing, but it's just like following through from Kidush Hachodesh, right? Once you say yesterday was Aleph Nisan, then 2 weeks from now it's going to be Pesach. There's no way to play with that.
It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. But the part of the kind of the chiddush of this mitzvah is that Hashem gave us the responsibility to determine the calendar and determine when the Chag D'Oraita is going to be. We decide, right? To the point that we can even change it. We have leeway to even fudge it and change it if the Chachamim see the need.
The
right?
story of, was it
The story
Rabban Ben
of
Gamliel?
of Rabban Gamliel, when they were, right, there are stories in the Gemara about Rabban Gamliel sending letters out saying, we decided to wait to add another month because there are all these factors. But those were the factors that, like the it seems too cold still, and the grain hasn't risen yet. And
I was thinking of the story where he told, who was it, to bring his...
Oh, it's Rabbi Yeshua, right? About Yom Kippur. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right, he told him to come on his Yom Kippur with his walking staff and his wallet and everything. Right, so that's part of the same thing. That story is really about the authority of the centralized authority.
And the machloket.
Centralized rabbinical authority. That's what.
Machloket, and that he had the final word.
Yeah. But there, Rabban Gamliel had a reason for doing it the way he did it, and Rabbi Yeshua saw that he wasn't doing it according to pure halachic considerations. There was something else going on, but that's part of it. That's the whole thing, is that the Torah allows us to do that. And that's how there could also be like this whole ongoing, for a few generations, there was an ongoing struggle with the tzdukim, that the tzdukim in the Torah it says about Sfirat HaOmer. I mean, Sfirat HaOmer is called Sfirat HaOmer because it's counting from Minchat HaOmer. Right? Minchat HaOmer was a korban that was brought on the second day of Pesach. So the Torah says that you bring that Lemachrat HaShabbat. Lemachrat HaShabbat. And in the Torah Shabbat Peh, we learn that Shabbat is Chag. So the day after Chag. But the Tzdukim said, it says Shabbat, it means Shabbat. So for them, the first day of Pesach always had to come out on Shabbat. And then they would plan the whole year around it. Meaning they would plot in order to get it to end up on Shabbat months ahead of time, because every month you can only fudge one day. You only have one day of leeway if it's going to be a full month, a 29-day month, or a 30-day month, right? Those are the only options. So they had this whole system set up where they were trying to cheat and always force it to build up to Pesach being on Shabbos. And so they would pay people off to go and lie, and it was like a mess. This happened for years, for decades, at least. Yeah. So there's a little bit of leeway here that the Torah gave the Chachamim to decide on their own, and that's, we're going to see here in the next sentence, that's what actually enables us to continue to this day, even without Beit Din Samuch. So that's the pasuk that we're basing this on. It's kind of hard to see where in this pasuk the Beit Din Samuch is being implied, but we do see that the Torah specifically says lachem. It's in plural because it's not on the individual, right? So the plural here, the implication is that it's some authority, and that's the Beit Din. החודש הזה לכם ראש חודש. כלומר, כשתראו חידושה של לבנה, תקבעו לכם ראש חודש. So here we see that the word chodesh, which we always think of being a month, actually means renewal. It actually is from the word chadash, chidush alevana. It's the chodesh is all about the new moon, the moon being reborn, and that's when the month starts, when the moon is born, when it reappears, right? So that's the Hachodesh Hazeh Lechem, meaning Hachidush Hazeh. Right, in the Rashi brings the Midrash that Hachodesh Hazeh, that moment was Rosh Chodesh. At that moment, there was a new moon when that was said to Moshe Rabbeinu. When he received that mitzvah, Hashem showed him the new moon. The new moon comes out, and Hashem says, look, you see that? A chodesh hazeh? So it's not this month. It's this state of the moon. It's called chodesh.
So what was a month called? Chodesh as well, or was it another word for a month? Because
Yarach,
Yach is a moon, right?
but wasn't that
That's also
month?
a name for a month.
Is that what it was called before?
Yardayach or Chodesh. It has both, right? Both names apply, but they both are implying the same thing. Yeah, we don't have any other name for a month. It's a moon, just like many moons ago, right?
yeah,
It's the same thing. It's a method of counting based on the moon. So it doesn't need its own name.
Okay, I just have to say,
Yeah.
a moon has the shape of a head. It's around like, and you just said that like it's really a new moon. It's a
It's a
Rosh
Rosh.
Chadash, a new head, a new.
That's funny.
Even though
Except
the
that when
moon
it's,
is a
when it's
sliver,
round,
so-
it's the middle of the month.
Right.
That's
All right, never mind.
but it's the forming of the head and then the unforming. Maybe. Okay, everything clear so far?
yeah.
Okay, so now the Sefer Chinuch brings in the what do you call it, the whiz-binger, the heavy artillery here. It's not only seeing the new moon, afilu lo tir'uha, even if you don't see the new moon, מכיוון שהיא ראויה להיראות על פי החשבון המקובל, right? Even if you don't see it, but you know it's supposed to come out at this time, you can make that the new month. So that is why we need that stipulation. But what if it's cloudy,
Yeah.
right? What are you going to do? Like, this is just something. This is somewhere where we see that there are certain parts of Torah Shebal Peh that is just pure logic. Like, there's no way that the Torah would set us up for failure, because obviously sometime it's going to be cloudy in that 1.5 day, 2 day window that you have to see the new moon. Sometimes it's cloudy for a whole week, right? Well, what are you supposed to do in that situation? Oh, there's no new month. The month just continues on until you see the moon a week later, and then the next month is only 3 weeks long. Like, right? It doesn't make any sense. So the pure logic dictates, and Chachamim, there are a number of things that the Gemara says that this halacha is just svara, it's just logic. And even things that are d'oraita, Chachamim could say, this is the only logical way to do it. And it becomes d'oraita. Because Hashem gave us sechel as a tool to apply the Torah, right? And that's why it's d'oraita, because that all the sechel also given to us by Hashem.
So we just mentioned that the mitzvah was given lachem to the people,
Yeah.
but it kind of seems to be going back to the individual person to keep it even if you don't see it.
No. It's all plural. Afilu lo tir'uha.
So if I don't see it, who has the
Nobody
obligation to
sees
tell
it.
me?
What if nobody sees it? The Beit Din has to wait for somebody to see it. The Beit Din themselves can see it, but usually it's somebody else seeing it.
You know what I'm saying?
But
it's
if
been
there's
taken
no
out of the-
witness to the new moon, what do? You could still declare Rosh Chodesh when you know it had to have come out by this time.
Yeah, but then my question, who's supposed to know this is the time? Because it's now Lachem. It's not the Beis Din's.
Lachem, it's plural, it's Beis Din.
Got you. Okay.
Right?
That would be a hilarious skit if you had the Beit Din and they all saw the moon and they're like waiting for the Edim to come and they're like, they got stuck on the way or something and like they know it's the moon but they need the Edim to come. Like, what do you do?
Oh, the Mishnah says they can be the Eidim also.
Oh, they can? What about Al Pi Cheshbon Mekubal? Is that the witness? A Mekubal is a witness?
No.
What is that?
Mikubal, Mikubal means something that was received, right? So Cheshbon, a Mikubal, means accepted, the accepted reckoning. Right? Cheshbon here means reckoning, something that's calculated. So we have lekabel, to receive, so something that mekubal is received. Meaning, usually in our context, it means something that was passed down, right? Something that was transmitted from previous generations. And the implication here is that the Chachamim very early on had figured out from an astronomical standpoint when the cycle of the moon is, like what the length of the cycle of the moon is, and they were able to calculate when the next time it's going to start. And but since it's supposed to be, since it's supposed to be a human eyewitness in order to make it official, so you have to wait for the time when it's possible for a human to see it. It's not enough to just say, oh, I know exactly when it's supposed to be, but it also has to be something that could be seen. Like, what if it happens at a time when the moon is on the other side, right? When the place that you are on the planet is facing away from the moon, right? You can't see it then. Then you have to wait for the revolution of the Earth to come around and be able to see it. These were all things that Chachamim knew about way back, like, I'm talking before the Mishnah, over 2,000 years ago.
But isn't it something also with Kidush Levanah that you can't do it too early, even after Rosh Chodesh, you still got to wait? It's like something, when you do Kidush Levanah?
Kidush Levanah is a different story.
Yeah, but that's also, you can't do
Kidush Levanah and Kidush Hachodesh are two different things, right? Kidush Hachodesh is as early as possible. Kidush Levanah is an appreciation of our identification with the cycle. As the ups and downs of history, there's always going to be an ups and downs of Am Yisrael's presence and koach, significance on the world stage. And so we're like the moon, right? The moon grows, it waxes, it wanes, it always comes back. And the other aspect, of course, being that we're like the moon, that all the light that we have is Hashem's light. It's not our own light. It's not like we're not so fantastic because of us. It's not us, right? We're just reflecting Hashem's light into the world. And so we have this identity. So that if you want to identify with something, you want to identify it when it's in its stage where it already looks impressive and is on the upswing, right? So that's why in Kidush Levanah we say, all right, the Mekilim say you have to wait 3 days, then it doesn't look pathetic, and the Ari says you should wait 7 days, because then it's already in its last quarter leading up to a full moon.
Yeah, okay.
So that's a different thing, right? And that's the Dirabban. We're not going to see Kidush Levanah in this book. Right. So the Cheshbon HaMekubal is knowing astronomically when it's supposed to happen, and then if you don't have Eidim, right, you can still say, okay, this is the latest that somebody should have been able to see it. This is Rosh Chodesh. So that's why in the Mishnah we see the they would wait, and if Eidim didn't come on the first day, that could be Rosh Chodesh, then they always just say the next day is Rosh Chodesh automatically. And this stipulation also enables us to have a calendar that is set ahead of time for 2,000 years, right? It's this same thing, meaning when there was at the end, who set up the calendar? Hillel HaKatan, that was how he was known, and he was one of the last smuchim. So he saw that the smicha was ending, and that we're going to be in trouble, because if you don't have a Beit Din Samuch, then you can't do Kidush Hachodesh. So he and his Beit Din did Kidush Hachodesh for the rest of history by building the Luach. They basically said, like, we're not going to have anyone who can do it. So it's the same as like a cloudy week or the Eidim don't come. It's the same kind of situation where you just don't have the means. So you can use the calculations. And then they use that calculation just whoosh. And their calculations were so precise that over 2,000 years we've built up a difference of a few hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And
You sure that's all?
And not more than that. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, 5 hours. It's off a little bit, but not like a different day off. You know? So it's pretty impressive, and it's cool to see how that kind of chain of applications of logic and how it builds out and enable us to do that. How can we get straight back to the mitzvah itself? All right, we're on the second paragraph. You good? Are there more questions?
All good.
Okay. Who's going to read this?
Give it a shot. Where are we? Okay, v'chen tachlul ha-mitzvah. Is that what it says? Tachlul ha-mitzvah zo mitzvat ibor hashana. So what's tachlul?
I would read it tichlol.
Tichlol?
Is that what it says? Does it say tichlol?
I don't know. There's
You
no
have any
vowels.
clue?
So
Oh, you don't have vowels.
What
You
is
don't have vowels. Yeah, I'd say tichlol.
what is tichlol?
It would include.
Oh, okay, great.
It would include.
Include this mitzvah, the mitzvah of the impregnation of the year. Lefishi said mitzvat Kidush Hachodesh k'dei yasu Yisrael moedei Hashem u'moedam. According to the foundation of the mitzvah of making holy the month, in order that Yisrael should make or set in place the timetable of God, Modeh Hashem.
Yeah, Moed is
Seasons,
is,
holidays.
Yeah, it's a holiday. I mean, that's how we.
The holidays of Hashem in their time. Ukmochen mitzvat ibor shana. Mizeh hayisod hi, and therefore the mitzvah of the. Is there another way to say impregnation of the year? Is there like a more modern way of saying that, or completion of the year, or leap year?
You can say leap year, yeah, but how do you make a verb out of that?
The mitzvah of making a leap year comes from this foundation.
You could just say knocking up the year.
Okay.
Knock it up.
Should I keep going, or did you want to?
No, so kmo chen, right? We said is similarly, not therefore.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So this is on the similar track. This is an extension, right? That's how you can say
Yeah.
that Kidush Hachodesh and Ibur Shana are the same mitzvah, because Ibur Shana is actually an extension of Kidush Hachodesh, since, as we'll see in the next sentence, part of having the Chagim in their proper place is keeping the calendar on track with the solar year. Is keeping them in sync. And that's the purpose of Rosh Chodeshim, right? We say Chodesh Hazeh Lachem. Chodesh Hazeh is a Chidush Hazeh, meaning that the month starts with the new moon. Rosh Chodeshim, meaning this time of the year has to be the beginning of the calendar. And this time of the year was right before Pesach. So that always has to be where the year starts in relation to the solar year. That's the implication. Go on.
ואולם מלבד זה, המקרה באו הערות בכתובי התורה, יורו על מצוות העיבור, והוא מה שכתוב ושמרת את החוקה הזאת למועדה. Okay, ulam. Always?
Ulam?
Unless? I don't remember what that means.
Ulam usually translates however, and here he means however in the sense of that's not the only thing. However, there's even more. It's like even though, I guess he's saying, even though you can see the similarity, the parallel between Kidush Hachodesh and Ibur Shana, that the relationship, that's not all. However, there's more. There's more there are more places where the Torah specifies that the Chagim have to be in a particular time of the year.
Milvad ze is in addition to?
Correct.
Okay, so...
Besides for that.
However, yeah, and besides for that, the Torah comes to teach in the writings of the Torah.
No, he says, Milvad ze mikra, right? Besides for this pasuk.
Mikra is a pasuk. I thought Mikra is always meant the Torah.
Mikra in a general sense can mean all of Tanakh. Also, it means an individual pasuk.
Okay. So...
In the Gemara, it's just called Kra, without the mem.
Oh, okay. All right. So, however, besides this, I just lost this one. Besides this pasuk.
This pasuk being Hachodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodeshim.
Okay. Now, Ba'u ha'erot, the instructions came? Is that no?
Ba'u ha'erot that we were given, or literally, they came. Additional directives or.
The directives came in the writings of the Torah. Yoru.
They would inform, or they would instruct. That would instruct.
All right. Can we go over that verb? That would instruct the mitzvah of the Ibor.
They would inform us about it. Yoru, leharot. The word Torah comes from this word, right? Leharot, to instruct. Moreh, morah. Morah, right? The teacher. Mm-hmm. Same word. So yoru is just a future tense.
Do we see that in modern Hebrew?
Absolutely.
Huh, okay.
So this is, what is the, I guess it's, is that the shortest? Huh. I'm not entirely sure what the source is here. I think it would be a hey, which is kind of weird because that looks like pregnancy.
Right.
But pregnancy might have a yud in the end or something. Yeah. So this we only generally see in the Hifil. lehorot. I can't think of any other binyan that we have this for. Yeah. So Torah also is a teaching, literally. And it's used that way in a general sense of a teaching, right? We have Torah is the teaching from God, but it's also any kind of teaching. So you can have like Torah Chassidut, right? The teachings of Chassidut. Rabbi Nachman's teachings are also called Torot. Right? Torah Aleph, Torah Bet. Even things that are not related to Yiddishkeit can be called Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Torah Lechima, not the study of warfare.
It's not related to the word Torah or Toran, right?
No.
Okay, I think I'm done with that person.
Um,
Vahuma.
so now he gets into where are these hints or directives telling us that the Chagim need to be placed in the calendar
Right.
in particular places.
And this is what is written when it says, V'shamata et l'chukat, you should keep this law. This
Right.
law.
What is this law?
L'moedah.
This law is Korban Pesach. That's the context of that pasuk. Is when it's talking about Korban Pesach, the Chukah Hazot. It has to be at a particular time in the year. So we see that actually the Torah's conception of a year is the solar year. That's the base. We always think, we have a lunar calendar. Actually, we have a solar calendar, but we count lunar months. Our base is the solar calendar because we say Pesach has to be Aviv. It has to be in the spring. The spring only exists on the solar calendar, right? Because that's a month of the solar cycle. It's a season of the solar cycle. So the Torah very obviously sees the solar year as being where people are holding, how people experience life is the solar cycle, but we count it using the lunar cycle. We count it using our months are lunar, but our year is solar.
Why is that? Why do we do both?
Well, they're both natural cycles, right? The Gregorian calendar uses 30 and 31 days arbitrarily. It's not based on anything natural. It's just a way to split up the year. It's actually based originally on obviously using lunar, otherwise it wouldn't be that length.
Yeah.
But they basically said, we'll take the normal intervals that people are used to a month being, and we'll just kind of tweak it a little bit to fit 12 exactly into the solar year. And even then they have to keep on tweaking it because there's a leap year every 4 years, and then every 100 years there isn't a leap year, and because it's not, it doesn't fit. You can't, but it's like the next evolution of trying to fit the lunar months into the solar year, right? It's just a different way of doing it. So even the Gregorian calendar is trying to do the same thing. They just don't have actual lunar months. They're fake lunar months. They're approximate lunar months. They're 30, 31 days instead of, or 28, right?
Yeah.
Instead of 29 or 30, which are actual lunar months. That's the actual lunar month. Okay. Month is 29 and a half days. So it's a natural, Judaism is built on the way we perceive time naturally. Our day starts at a natural point. The sun goes down. That's something that everyone can perceive. And the sun comes up, a lot of people don't perceive it because they're sleeping. So that's not the best time to start the day. But when the sun goes down, everyone's awake and everyone's like, oh, okay, now it's getting dark. I feel that transition. You feel the moon. You notice the moon. You notice that transition. The seasons, it's everything. It has to be natural. Whereas 12 o'clock on the secular day, secular clock, it doesn't mean anything. It shifts around with the seasons. It's completely meaningless. It's completely arbitrary. It's a standardization that's necessary for modern life. Same as time zones and all sorts of other things, right? The halachic clock daily clock doesn't need a time zone. Because wherever you are, you're basing yourself on the sun. It automatically gets shifted as you move. The whole concept of time zone only comes about when you start standardizing the clock and not using the sun.
That's interesting because as Geula gets closer and we think about when Mashiach comes, like the whole world will recognize that there's one God. And I don't know, maybe everybody will speak Hebrew, I don't know, but maybe they'll get rid of the time zones and everybody will have this calendar.
Look, if you don't have time zones, that just means you don't know what time it is for somebody else. Right? When you have time zones, you know, you can look and check, oh, for him it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. If you don't have a time zone, you just can guess. You don't even know what time it is in the next city. Like, you could be up in the mountain, someone lives in a valley, and it's a different time. Even though they're really close to you, people living in Tiberia would have a different time from us because by the time it gets light in the morning, it's half an hour later.
Yeah, no, we couldn't live that way.
Because, right,
there's no logic to it. Especially not by the, like, date line, what do you call it? Where it goes like...
national dateline?
Like between New Zealand and Samoa.
Yeah.
It's like a 4-hour flight and it's 24 hours behind.
Yeah.
Like, where's the logic?
Well, you can't... Right, once you have...
There's a secular logic that you have the time zones.
Once you have time zones, you have to have an international dateline also, although there is the concept of halachic international dateline also, because if you're traveling, at some point, the day has to transition. And the question is, when is that point? Right? Even if you're traveling, you say like, well, parts of the world, the sun comes up right here, and then 12 hours later it comes up in Hawaii.
So
okay, which day is it? Who's got the first day? Is it yesterday and who's it tomorrow?
So I know a guy who flew New Zealand to Chicago and back. It was the Omen, and he even flew out. It was weird. He flew out Yom Shishi, let's say morning. By the time he landed, it was basically the same time, but Shabbos had come in when he took off.
Mm-hmm.
Was like...
Yeah, then you go back and you miss a day of counting, right?
Yeah, but then...
Or if you don't go back... No, if you don't go back, if you keep going the same way, you can skip a day of counting Omer.
Yeah, but it's even
you
more
lose a day. Like, there's a story about a guy who went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was a guest of Rabbi Yol Khan, who was a huge Talmud of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It was the Choser, one of the main Hasidim there. And he had business in Japan. And then instead of going back, he flew to Japan through Europe, or maybe he was European, but then he came to Lubavitch, to New York, from Japan, went over the Pacific, for Shavuos. So this traveling happened during Spirit Omer. And it was Shabbat, and then Shavuot, and on Shabbat, they're having his meal, and he's telling his host, Rabbi Yol Khan, about his travel and stuff, and said, I think maybe you might have a different Shavuot than we do. And he's like, what? And he said, yeah, I remember that the Rebbe taught us once that there's 2 different things happening in Shavuot. One is Chag Shavuot, and one is Yom Matan Torah. And one of them is according to the date, and one of them is 50 days from Pesach, whenever that comes out. And for you, it's now been skewed. Now you have that on 2 different days, because your 50 days are longer. You lost a day in there. Your 50 days are shorter, actually. And he went and asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, he said, it's Shavuot for you today. It was on Shabbat. It was every Shavuot for everyone else. And he said, oh yeah. He said, Chag Sameach, right? And he's like, what? Like, for real? And then he came back, and he's like, but what about the day after? And he said, it's chol for you. You have to put on tefillin. And for everybody else it was Shavuot still. it was like, it was crazy because that was how the Rebbe understood, and it seems to be a very reasonable shot.
It seems to be very parallel to what you said, that this is a Kidush of the mitzvah given to Hashem, to the humans to decide. That's what the Rebbe was doing. He was questioning for this
Right, but he's not
person.
baiting, right? That's an individual decision. But that was how I understood. But now that's the way Torah works nowadays, right? Individuals. Because we don't have Sanhedrin, we don't have Smuchim, right? So the Torah has become decentralized. Essentially. So this is a very important concept to understand through this mitzvah, that we actually believe in the solar calendar, because that is the real year. We just count the lunar months. Our month is lunar, so then we have to always be making it up and tweaking it in order to keep the pace. But our year is not lunar. The Muslims have a lunar year. 12 lunar months is their year, and then they're completely divorced from the seasons. And they don't have, their Chagim have no reflection on the season. Like we have Chag Aviv, Chag Asif, Chag Katzir. There are two parallel systems that are conjoined. That we're not trying to ignore the fact that this is also an agricultural festival. It has both meanings, and the meanings are also connected. It's not like they're two separate meanings. It's two layers of the same cake, and the Muslims' Ramadan is it moves every year. It moves a month, so it's right now, and 3 years goes in the summer, and 3 years before that was in October. It's like it's a merry-go-round. It's bananas.
What did I hear yesterday? Nothing, not about this. I think yesterday's Tanya portion, whichever that was, spoke about the Kohen Gadol and the king are not allowed to decide about. Could it be the Rosh Hashanah when that was supposed to fall?
I think here, Rosh Hashanah, because they have personal interest. Yeah.
And it was, whether it was a joke or not, but the Kohen Gadol didn't want it to be too late because the mikveh would be too cold.
And Yom Kippur, where he has to be around the whole day barefoot.
Yeah.
And go into the mikveh 5 times. An outdoor mikveh, so it's not heated.
Yeah.
Right?
Is that
it's not a joke. No,
I was Rabbi
the Gemara says that, right? They can't be part of the Beit Din that decides if it's going to be a leap year or not.
No, so that I did get. I just wasn't sure it was a joke about the mikveh being too cold.
Oh, there's a machloket about it. The Gemara says because of a tzina, which is chill. But what's the chill? Is it that the floor is cold or the water is cold?
Because Lindsay, like Gordon, is hard to tell whether he's joking or not. You know him.
I don't know him. But there is, I remember that, I think it's a Tosfot there in the Gemara that says that it's not, they prove that it's not the water because the water could be heated. There were ways that in Yom Kippur, because it's a mitzvah for the Kohen Gadol, the mikvah, Mishum Tsar, they were allowed to heat the mikvah, and they had ways of heating the mikvah. They had like some kind of metal brick that they would heat on the fire, and then they'd throw it into the mikvah.
I just heard yesterday morning.
Yeah. So that's something I think is fascinating that we're going to hear. How are we doing on time?
A couple of minutes to 10.
Okay. Let's see how much we have left here. We have a bit. Okay, let's see if we can see the next paragraph, or at least part of it. Okay.
We're up to
The Inyan Mitzvah. Okay. So now the Sefer Chinuch is going to tell us a little bit about how it actually is meant to work.
שמור את חודש האביב ועניין המצווה כן. שבאים שני ירושלים כשרים,
Yisraelim.
ישראלים כשרים, לפני הבית דין והדין בפניהם, שירו הלבנה בחידושה, וקובעים ראש חודש על פיהם שאומרים, היום מקודש.
Yes. Please explain.
Let's see. As it says, as the Chodesh Ha'aviv, the month of the...
Oh, we read that. That was part of the previous paragraph. Is that
Uh,
they put that in the second paragraph here? The third paragraph? or
Oh, I
what?
must have stopped in the middle of the
No,
sentence.
for me that was the end of the sentence. Oh, oh, you didn't read that part?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I'm sorry if I confused them. Okay. Inyan mitzvah. Inyan mitzvah. That's where you should be starting.
okay. בעניין מצווה כן, so the... how is it like the inyan of the mitzvah?
Right. Cain. What does he mean by Cain here?
Thus?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Exactly.
So that's the mitzvah שבאים שני יום, that it comes to שבאים שני.
Shnei Yisraelim ksherim.
Who's coming? Two kosher Yidden. Yisrael is the original name for a Jew, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we see in a lot of places, even in very late halachic sources, they often say Yisrael. They won't say Jew, they just say Yisrael. Which means
So two holy Jewish men comes.
if you hold it, they just you have to,
Jewish men.
keep Shabbos. From Yidden.
They come to the Beis Din, and the Edom are by them, in front of them. And they see.
The Meidim is a verb. They testify.
בפניהם, and they see Halvana. What is Halvana?
Levana is a rabbinical term for the moon. In the Torah, it's called Yareach. In the rabbinical literature, it's called Levana. That's why you say Kidush Levana.
So they see the Levana, and they see the Chidush like they see the new moon.
Right, but Me'idim b'fneihem, they testify in front of the Beit Din. What do they testify? She yira'u alevana b'chidusha. That's their testimony. Is that they saw the new moon. Right? It's not that they're seeing. It's not a description of what happened.
Testifying that they saw
that's the
it.
content of the testimony. Is that we saw the new moon.
וקובעים ראש חודש על What is kovim?
The kbo. So that's to set. To set in stone, to set as a
Fortify almost? But no, that's not a good one.
no. Kboa, it's a good word to know. Keva is something permanent. Right? We're looking for mivneh keva. In Masechet Sukkot, we learned that a sukkah has to be arai, I don't know what the vowels here are, arai, something like that. And that's the opposite of keva. So arai is something transient, keva is something permanent. So likboa is to set it as permanent or as definite, right? So they're declaring, in this case, Kov'im Rosh Chodesh al Pihem. They declare Rosh Chodesh al Pihem according to their words.
And that today
Right? She'omrim, the Beit Din says, Hayom Mekudash. They say, okay, today was Rosh Chodesh. It actually, it's kind of retroactive because the what happens, like if it's the 29th day of the month, the Eidim come during the day. They see at night. They'll see the night before the moon, and then usually it takes them a long time to travel. Sometimes it happens in Yerushalayim, but Beit Din's in Yerushalayim. By the time they get there, it's the next day, it's the next morning of the 29th, and then sometime during the course of the day, they'll finish processing that, to interrogate them and whatnot, and they finish processing them and accept their testimony. They say, okay, today is Rosh Chodesh. And it's already the middle of the day, right? Everybody that morning didn't know if it was Rosh Chodesh or not. And what do? You daven Shacharis. Do you say hello? Well, nobody had these problems because davening wasn't the point. The point was the korbanot. The whole question was, do we bring korban Rosh Chodesh or not? That was the issue. And so they had a time limit on it, right? You could only, till a certain point in the afternoon, you could only accept the Eidim, because after that, you're going to say, oh, today was Rosh Chodesh, but it's too late to bring the korban. What are we going to do? Right? So they only would accept Eidim until a certain point in the afternoon when they have time to interrogate them and declare and bring the korban before the end of the day. So that's why it says Hayom Mekudash. Like, today is Rosh Chodesh, and if it's too late, but they accept them, then they'll say, okay, tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh.
Would they say Machal Mekudash?
I guess, yeah.
Oh, it's kind of like...
Machar Chodesh. But if it happened on the 30th, so what would happen? If they didn't come, maybe, actually, I don't know if I should be saying this, he probably gets into this.
מהטעם שאין מצווה זו אלא בסמוכין, לפי שבא בפירוש החודש הזה לכם, גדולים וסמוכים כמותכם, כי למשה ואהרון נאמר.
Do you want to...
לטעם שאין מצווה זה אין... לטעם...
The reason why?
So Tom is an explanation for something. The reason, the explanation.
Explanation why there wasn't a mitzvah, שאין מצווה זו אלא בסמוכין... I do not get that one.
Okay, so first of all, there's a phrase here that's very common in Ela. Okay, in Ela means, it actually means only. But it literally means there's nothing except for. Right?
Yeah.
So it becomes, if you want to condense it, you can just say only. So in mitzvah zo ela bismuchin, this mitzvah is not, doesn't exist, except for with smuchin. So you could say this mitzvah only exists with smuchin, right? You can just condense it that way, but that's the meaning here. And that's something that we're going to see a lot. Ein Ela. So when you see those words together near each other in a sentence, right, you need to connect them. Ein mitzvah zo ela bismuchin. I lost my place. Lefi.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
לפי שבא בפירוש החודש הזה לכם. So this mitzvah is
only applicable with סמוכים לפי שבא when it comes
Where do you see when?
לפי
The fee is according to.
yeah, according to שבא when it comes בפירון
Not when it comes. Lefi she is according, so according that it came. Right? Due to the fact that it came biferush, explicitly. Here, ba biferush means the same as we saw mekubal. It's something that's accepted. Ba biferush is like it came to me, right? It's been passed down to me. So ba biferush here means it's something that we have in our Masoret as being the explanation perush, right? The explanation, the interpretation of Hachodesh Halechem. Hachodesh Halechem is a quote here from the pasuk. What is the accepted explanation of this pasuk? Gdolim usmuchim kemodchem. So this he's referring to it being a medrash, but he's saying that this is the proper understanding of the pasuk that's been handed down to us. That when it says lachem, it means gdolim usmuchim kemodchem. So gdolim, we saw there has to be Beit Din Gadol b'Chokhmah.
Yeah.
It has to be the most illustrious or most erudite Beit Din in the generation, and have to be samuch, they have to be ordained in official chain of ordination from Moshe Rabbeinu. Kemodchem, just as you are. Kemodchem is a rabbinical form of the perhaps better known Kamochem. Kamochem. Right? Kamoni Kamocha. So in rabbinical Hebrew, Kamo sometimes becomes Kmot. So you have Kimoto, Kimotchem, Kimot Shehu, just as it is. Not to be confused with the modern Hebrew Kamut, which is quantity, right? It comes from the word Kama. This comes from the word Kmo. So the medrash that we've been handed down is lachem, people like you. It's to you, or people like you. People like you being dolim smuchim k'motchem. How do we arrive at this conclusion? Ki Moshe ve'Aaron ne'emar. The context of the pasuk is that Hashem is speaking to Moshe and Aaron. So just like Moshe and Aaron are Gdulei b'Chokhmah and Smuchim, interestingly enough, how could they be Smuchim if all the smicha comes from Moshe? How could he himself be Samuch, right? He's Samuch from Hashem.
Even better.
Yeah. And he gives smicha to Aaron. So, Gdolim Smuchim Kemotchem. That's where this particular of the mitzvah comes from, that has to be big. And ironically enough, Moshe and Aaron, of course, can't serve as, they could serve in Beit Din, but they can't serve as Eidim together. They came to do Kidush Hachodesh and say, oh, we saw the moon together, the Beit Din can't accept them because they're brothers. They can be on the Beit Din together. So let's do one more sentence and then we'll stop. ועוד דרשו.
ועוד דרשו הדבר מצמח.
מצמח שמח.
מצמח לא. ועוד and another one. דרשו הדבר
the od, furthermore. It's not another one, it's just
furthermore.
beyond that, right? Furthermore, darshu adavar. What does darshu here mean?
Explain.
They learned it out, right? They derived it from.
That this hadavar
Right, this thing, meaning this,
concept.
well, in this case it's the requisite of having smuchim.
Ah.
So this is a different meaning of samach. Well, it's the same meaning of samach. It's just different application of that meaning, right? Mid de samach. What are we going to erase here? So you know what this means, right? Samach.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about it the whole night. Samach means to make something adjacent. The samach here is that the Torah put these psukim next to each other. Mita samachlo means the fact that these psukim are next to each other, meaning it means that their meaning is tied together. It's not a coincidence that they're next to each other, even though they seem to be talking about different things. There is a reason that they're put right next to each other, and so that's something that I can learn from. That's the darshu, right? Something that they learned out from their adjacency. Me did from the fact that samachlo, that he or it put it next to, right? The samach here is the Torah, but it's referring to the Torah in masculine because in the Gemara, the Torah is referred to as a Rachmana. This is just an interesting fact. We'll see this further on down the road. But Rachmana, which is a translation of the Hebrew Rachman into Aramaic, is in the Gemara is interchangeable with the Torah. Rachmana Amar, Rachmana Patrei. All the time you see Rachmana, and it's actually referring to the Torah. Interestingly enough, and so then you can refer to the Torah as the masculine instead of the feminine, which we're used to thinking about it, at least in a grammatical sense. So then you can have a sentence like this: "Ve'od darshu adavar, mida samach lo," from the fact that it put this pasuk next to this other pasuk.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah, I did.
You with
Yeah.
us? So this other pasuk is Dabru el kol adat Yisrael. So adat Yisrael is in other places very clearly zikenim, ziknei ha'edah, right? The zikenim being the chachamim, the Beit Din. So Dabru el kol adat Yisrael, which is the next pasuk. Or the pasuk before that, where are we at? Yud Gimel Yud, and this is Yud Gimel Bet. That's not the original pasuk. Hold on, it's all the back at the beginning. Yud Bet Bet. Yud Bet Gimel. Right, it's the next pasuk. So the pasuk of Achodesh Lachem continues Dabru. Adat Yisrael. This is something that you have to take to the Eda, this mitzvah. And who's the Eda? Adat Yisrael, that's the Beit Din. So Moshe and Aaron are told to take the mitzvah to the Beit Din, because that's who it applies to. This is not, some mitzvot, Moshe Rabbeinu said, tell everyone, right? Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta alehem asu lechem tzitzit. That applies to everyone equally. Huh? Not women, right? But it applies to the whole population equally. Whereas this mitzvah applies to Beit Din, that's why it says Dabru El kol adat Yisrael, and not b'nei Israel. כלומר, שיהיה להם, לאותם שיקדשו החודש, רשות כל ישראל. כלומר, חכמים גדולים שבישראל, כגון בית דין הגדול. So this mitzvah, when you perform it, you have to have reshut of all of Israel. But what is it? Reshut, you have to have permission. Who gives you permission? The chachamim. Because Judaism is not a democracy. Right? Not everybody. It's not a modern democracy. The modern democracy, everybody is voting. The original democracy, right, where the word demokratia comes from, in Athens, not everybody had a vote. Only the citizens, the slaves didn't get to vote, the women didn't get to vote, the uneducated didn't get to vote, only the upper class educated, right? So they didn't make that up, right? We had this way before they did. Only the chachamim get to vote. Right, you have to go and bring this to Kol Adat Yisrael. But what does everybody mean? It means everybody who counts. It means all the chachamim. So that's where we're going to stop. I don't know this paragraph, but we're out of time. So any last questions, comments?
I find it hard to wrap around my mind that the day starts at nighttime. I just could never really chop that.
Does that make more sense now?
It makes sense logically, but like if I try to like get into the essence of that and like feel into that, that doesn't work for me. I'm just so used to seeing like night is the end of the day and that's it. In the same way that it's hard for me to get used to the Hebrew calendar, I still use one that goes from January to December. I still, from left to right. It's like I think it's the whole like, I don't know, Torah mindset that I'm so stuck in like the galut that I can't, I don't know, when the night falls, do you feel like, oh yay, the day is starting? Like, is that?
Not if it's like a day that's the same as the day before, right? If it's a different Shabbos, right? Shabbos starts, you feel it, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, now it's Shabbos.
Sure.
You feel it coming, like you feel the day waning, like, oh, Shabbos is almost there.
But if it's like a Monday night, like tonight, do you
Yeah,
feel like
but
that
what's
was
the difference
Tuesday morning,
between
like
Monday and
Yom
Tuesday?
Sorry,
I don't know.
Shlishi morning?
If we were more sensitive to the difference between the days, then we would, right? The Mekubalim would say that every day and every part of each day has like its own character and its own corresponding things that are going on in Shemayim. If we were sensitive to that, then we would also, be feeling that transition. But since all the weekdays are the same,
but even
no
for me,
transition.
it feels like Shabbos begins at night. It doesn't feel like. It feels like Shabbos starts the night before. It doesn't feel.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. If
Yeah.
it's a holy day, you feel the holy
Right,
day.
because you're
No, but it still doesn't
sensitive to
feel
the
like
difference.
it's the beginning of the day. Like you said, it still feels like.
Oh, you're saying the transition into Shabbos happens in the middle of the day.
No, it begins at night, but it doesn't feel like it's the same day as the day after. It feels like Shabbos is
Oh, the
the
Shabbos
evening of
night
Yom Shishi
and Shabbos day.
and Shabbos day. It doesn't feel like Shabbos day begins at night.
Yeah. Like my son, my 3-year-old, also talks about this is going to happen on Shabbat, and also the next Shabbat, which means the next day, in the morning. Like,
It's like, and it's like I could never say to my kids, "No, it's your birthday, Thursday, 8 p.m." Like, no, you got to sleep before I'm gonna like. But I get the concept, but I think it's like just the secular world has put,
well, there's something about waking up in the morning and saying, okay, that's when I'm starting my day.
Yeah.
And the Torah recognizes that also, right? We have both because, for instance, in Masechet Brachot, there's a question about that, about does the day follow the night or does the night follow the day? And they're both true. for certain things we say the day belongs to the night before, and for certain things the night belongs to the day that preceded it. Like, that's how we're able to say, map out the korbanot and the tefillot. That Ma'ariv, there's no korban Ma'ariv. During the day, there are two korban. There's korban tamid shel shachar and tamid shel ben arbaim. And that's what we say, that's shacharis mincha. Okay, what is Ma'ariv? What is Ma'ariv about? It's hekter yimurim. Hekter yimurim is after the day was over, they would burn everything that needed to be burned on the altar, right? You have like the main part of the korban, you shech, that you spill the blood, right? And then there's this whole processing of it where you have to cut it up, and then the burning, it would continue to burn. Some parts of it would only start to burn after the day was over, but the other parts would continue to burn and be consumed, and that's part of the mitzvah, is for the korban to be consumed by the flame. So the mitzvah continues into the night. And so for that purpose we say, oh, that mitzvah actually belongs to the day before, so it starts during the day and continues on into the night, rather than vice versa. And that's true also for korbanot that have their zman is a day and a night. Right? You bring it during the day, and then the night afterwards also belongs to that day. So the Torah recognizes that they're both true. Meaning starting your day at dawn from a technical perspective doesn't really work. Because what if you want that day to be like special, then you have to wake up in the middle of the night in order to prepare for it. So days that we need to prepare for, you prepare during the day and it starts at night.
It was just like my day begins with waking up, washing hand, tzitzit. It doesn't start with Shema. After you've gone to bed, when you say Shema, that's not the beginning of your day. Well, it might be, but for most people, that's where you end your day and begin your day with washing your hands.
Well, maybe one way to look at it is the question of, do you rest in order to work, or do you work in order to rest?
Yeah.
Right? So if your life is about your mission, then you're sleeping in order to get up in the morning and have strength.
Yeah.
Whereas if your life is about enjoyment, if you're self-centered, then all I want to do is rest. And so I'm only putting in whatever time I need in order to get things done, to be able to do nothing, or to be able to enjoy myself. And then the night, right, is the goal. And the day is just the preparation for that.
It's also easier here than like Sweden is a lovely place in some ways, but the calendar and the seasons are completely
bonkers.
Like I went there for Tish B'Av a few years ago, and like the fast started like 10 p.m. And
then it ends also after 10 p.m.
No, exactly. Even starting watching Shabbos, it was a disaster. Or wintertime Shabbos begins at 2:45 and comes out at 4. And then it makes even less sense with the day starting at 9, because that means that Sunday begins 4 p.m. on Shabbos. Like, what's the Shabbos 4 p.m. and then you're on to Sunday. But yeah, I guess it could make sense.
Last thing, what you were saying about the energies of the day. So we were just learning this yesterday, and what's the continuation after the Tanya? Is it the Sefer, the Shari Yichud or something like that?
Shari Yichud.
So the teacher of that class was talking about how, Sunday is, or Yom Rishon is the energy of Chesed, right? Yom Shini is the energy of Gevura, and so on and so forth, right? And then Shabbat is Malchut. So you really could tap into that, like right now we're going into Tiferet. So I guess.
Right. So if you're sensitive
Be
to those
sensitive to that,
transitions,
or at
then
least
you
have the
feel it.
intention to connect to that, and then I will be able to feel the changing of the day. But wait, this. All right. So if this is the beginning of the day, but you don't call it night. You don't call it day. You call it night. But it's the next day.
Oh, well, there's a day in the sense of a 24-hour period, and a day in the sense of daylight.
Right. Because we didn't just have a nice sunny night. We had a sunny day. But now it's going into Yom Shlishi.
Yeah.
It's a different Yom.
Well, that's because that's it's built into the language that way because we perceive the daytime as being the ikr, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because we believe, and this is something built into English also, so apparently this is not only a Jewish belief, that the daytime is the ikr and that we rest in order to work and not the other way around.